Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Insider Insights. I'm David Brear, Group CEO here at 11FS. Today we are joined by a longtime friend of 11FS, Francesca Carlesi, who we had the pleasure of hearing her disruptive insights since she co-founded Molo Finance, the UK's first digital mortgage lender. Now she's back with us in a new, pretty big high-stakes role, I have to say, in terms of all the things that are happening, leading the UK arm of one of the biggest fintech players out there, Revolut. And Francesca's leadership, Revolut has hit some massive milestones over the last year, from securing its long-awaited UK banking licence, pretty much one of the most debated things on Fintech Insider for, goodness, the last 7 years, and adding 2 million new customers, pushing past 10 million users alone in the UK. These are pretty impressive things to add to the trophy cabinet, and we're really, really interested to hear what's next for Revolut and how Francesca is shaping its future. Welcome back to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Always good to be back at Fintech Insider.
That was a hell of a build-up as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like...
now I feel a little bit intimidated, to be honest. Yeah.
Has that first year gone quickly in Revolut? Because it feels like, I guess, I remember reading the announcement and I was like, oh, cool, that's a really great appointment. But I imagine that, has it gone by like a snap of a finger, or has it been a long year?
So it feels like yesterday I joined Revolut, to be honest, on one side. On the other side, it feels much more than a year. Now you mentioned a year, I was like, actually, yes, that's true. But a lot has happened and it's been exciting. Overall, one word comes to mind for me, exciting. And it's been very impactful. I think at Revolut, we hit a lot of milestones this year. So I'm happy about where we are. Yeah. But, there's more to do as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. The job never stops in that regard, does it? But we were just joking a second ago, is you're just tipped over first year, so you've done that first year appraisal. What was the major objectives that you had kind of going into this role then?
Yeah, so the nice thing of the reason why I joined and what I'm doing is that there was a very, very clear mission ahead, and was to build the bank and in fact get the banking license and lead successfully through it. So I think clarity of our goals always helps, and that was my main mission. Really, it still is, as you probably know. By now, we got the license, we're working to mobilization, we're looking to now, we have to build out the bank because the bank is a separate entity. And I like that. It's a bit like going back to my startup days. And then effectively the kind of secondary part of the mission is to exit AWR and launch the bank, which is very exciting. To be honest.
Well, like you say, lots to do. The gaining the license is the ticket to ride, essentially, at that point, isn't it? And you've got all of the fun things ahead of you. We'll touch on that a little bit more because we sort of gloss over that in 2 minutes of gaining a banking license, kind of a big deal. But we'll come back to it. I mean, I guess stepping into Revolut, having obviously with the work that you've done previously, and both the fintech side and the big bank side, what was kind of your expectations, and was there anything that particularly surprised you?
Yeah. So I think overall, Revolut is a fantastic company. So my expectations clearly was a lot of excitement about being able to contribute to the mission. One of the few companies, I think, in the UK that has the potential to really be a global player in fintech and in financial services and shaping the future of financial services. And honestly, that's what has been driving me. So my expectation was to join a very fast-paced company, very kind of with high ambitions and a lot of great people. And that actually has been true. What I didn't know is whether this company has become so big, how much of it would be still very entrepreneurial and startup-like vis-a-vis a little bit more in a already transitioned to the corporate world. And what I can say is that Revolut is very entrepreneurial still. So in a way, going from Molo to Revolut was a very easy transition for me. I felt at home on day one, which is always nice, right? So there's a lot of strong focus on entrepreneurship, empowerment, and if you have good ideas, you can make them happen, and you can make them happen quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good for me. Now, clearly, it's a big company, lots of products, so there's a level of, compare even to Molo or a normal startup, right? A level of kind of intensity about product rollout and so on that you need to kind of get on top of, right? But but overall, I've been only positively surprised.
Yeah, I mean that's always the thing that I sort of see from the outside with Revolut is just, I mean, it doesn't. It almost, I think Revolut feature on this show every week because you've done a thing every week,
Yeah.
you know. So, and whether it's the UK or whether it's somewhere else in
true.
the world, there's something being shipped and a new product, a new feature. I mean that's basically the secret. You know, giving away the answer here. This is kind of the secret sauce, right?
Yes. It's one of the secret sources, but absolutely, I think that's quite impressive, I must say. And this is, I think, probably is what has set Revolut apart from many other companies: is ability to not only ship product fast, which is really important, but also maintain a high quality bar. So in terms of the customer experience overall, when I see companies that go through the startup journey and that scale up, it's very easy to dilute a little bit the product proposition or lower the bar. And this never happens at Revolut. And so the ability to give customers a new product, a new proposition very quickly and adapt it and continuously refine and never be happy or where we are, right? So this never settling applies to that as well. So that's been, I think it's something that's very, very difficult to replicate.
Yeah.
And it actually works because of what I mentioned before, because people are really empowered. And so you have the ability to have different teams all working different products. And then what you see is the result of it, but there is so much work that has happened before. So that's, it's really good to be part of that. It requires a different level of intensity in terms of how you review product and so on. But I think for customers, it's great because we don't, this kind of starts from a feedback loop from the customers as well. It's all about what customers need. And so we listen to that and then we kind of deliver quite quickly. Whereas in a bank, as we were mentioning before, right, it might take 2 years. And by the time the 2 years are gone, maybe a new need has kind of come up, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really specific.
Well,
really
if
special.
you see a market opportunity and it takes you 2 years to deliver against it, you're probably never actually meeting that opportunity, are you? So it's
correct. Yeah.
But that must be and like you say, obviously you've had that big bank experience as well. I mean, I sort of joke when I was in a big bank, I spent 99% of my time convincing people what to do and only 1% doing it. Yeah. And now the opposite of that is the case. And almost if you can free people from a lot of that red tape and bureaucracy, amazing things can happen, can't
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's for me has been one of the biggest drivers when I did move from banking, right? Because you end up spending so much time just on red tape, bureaucracy, and politics, and you probably know, right? That at the end, you lose sight what you're really there to do. Yeah. And I think that's, for me, it's one of the great things of Revolut. That really is all about getting things done and the right things done rather than spending time convincing other people or positioning yourself. So, and I think that is probably an underestimated characteristics of companies like Revolut. I'm sure there are others, because if you want to really deliver good customer outcomes, if you really want to make a change, if you want to drive innovation, which we know are government objectives now, right? I mean, being able to really do it and focus on this makes a big difference. And the other thing I think it's important to notice when you mention, product roadmap, product, what I found impressive is that we really focus on the customer and then build a proposition that kind of address what customer tells us or don't tell us, but we can understand they need, which goes beyond the traditional banking segmentation and needs and by product. So probably you and I have been in the industry long enough to know that a lot of people have been talking about being customer-centric and so on. Very few people, in fact, almost nobody is able to do it because the organizational structure of banks is by product. So I think at Revolut, we really look at the customer and what he needs, regardless of the theoretical segment where he sits, right?
Yeah.
And I think one example for us has been the launch of the eSIM, which I thought would be good to mention because technically it's not even a financial service product. It took a long time to get out to launch it because we wanted to do it right. But this was stepping into a very strong need of our customers, typically people that travel a lot, they're very international. And it's been probably one of the most successful products so far. So it tells you how it really you need to shift your mentality if you really care about the customer, right? You go beyond the traditional boxes in a way.
Yeah, I sort of almost don't see where your boundaries will be to a certain degree. And I don't want to get into, obviously there was speculation that you were joining to, spearhead a big mortgage push given your background. And, like you say, with eSIM, that wouldn't have been on the jobs to be done agenda for, the beginning of the business. So, and with all the aspirations around being a super app in that construct, then I mean, where do you say no? I guess is an interesting agenda.
I think it needs to be driven by the customer. So you say no to things that don't make sense and don't improve customer outcomes and they're not really needed in general. However, if we peel the onion a little bit more, right? So there's a minimum set of things that we want to do as Revolut, right? And then on top of that is more driven also by what we see customer asking us. So, and the way I break it down is the following. So ultimately, what we want to get is to be becoming the primary bank for all our customers, right? In UK, but also in other countries. And that's strategically, that's where we're going. So to do that, there is a minimum set of product and propositions you need to have. Because for customers to trust Revolut to be, let's say, the only card that they have in their wallet, the only bank account, you need to be able to serve all their needs. So you need to have lending, you need to have, of course, current accounts, savings and all that, ISAs, right, eventually. So that's the minimum that was mentioned before. That needs to be there, and we're building that. So we can talk more about this. Then on top of that, I think clearly, if you realize that, customer, we are individual, which are kind of do a lot of things every day. If you realize there are other things that complete that proposition, we are willing to look into that, develop something, and if we can do it, and it can do it in a good way, we launch it. If not, we don't. And we are not afraid, and that's also very important culturally, not afraid to launch something, recognize it doesn't work, and then retire it, which I think is something that big corporates never do.
Yeah, don't do well.
And create a lot of legacy products that go nowhere. So that is being agile, it really helps a lot.
And I guess on that point around obviously your background with mortgages, is there mortgages in the roadmap somewhere? Because obviously to your point, the biggest sort of transaction we really have in the UK is usually houses, and it's usually the worst relationship you have with a financial advisor, with a financial institution. So there's a huge opportunity there, I would have thought.
Well, I would think the same. I'm passionate about mortgages. I set up a whole company around that. So there is. It's not a mystery. We have launched mortgages, or we are launching mortgages in Europe.
Yeah.
In the UK, it's not in the roadmap right now. But clearly, eventually, if you want to complete and if you want people to really do everything with Revolut in terms of their financial life, we need to get there. But it's not going to happen in the short term. Although I know when I joined Revolut, I got a lot of messages about, okay, is this going to happen tomorrow? It is not. But
people are holding out who they're going to put their money with for their mortgage, then waiting for you to do that one. But all right, well, let's talk about the big thing in your first year of working at Revolut. Then the banking license. Obviously, that's a huge step. There's many organisations that have tried to go down that route, and it's been a pretty difficult one for many. But big tick on that one. Everybody feeling happy that's a process begun, or does it feel like the end, or is this the sort of beginning of a journey on that one?
Well, I think it's never the end, right? So we can it feels like more the beginning for me, because clearly there was a sense of hitting a milestone last year when it got the license, and that's fair enough, because this has been a process been going on for a while. Although I must say that it always takes a long time to get a banking license, not just for Revolut, all the other banks, it takes years. Just Revolut has been a little bit more on the spotlight. So
I guess for anybody listening to it, it's not like a TV license. You don't just go,
exactly.
It's £45 and you get your license. It's like, it's a dialogue with the regulator.
It's a dialogue with the regulator. So clearly it was great excitement getting there last year. So that was more of a destination. But I do think it's the start of a journey. So now clearly the first chapter of this journey is to complete mobilization. And so in a way, for me, it marks the graduation, I would say, from a disruptor, one of the most successful disruptors out there, to a trusted player in the industry, and the one that can be the deep go-to bank for all the future generations, right? So that's why for me is chapter 1 or chapter 2, but we keep going. So
Well, does it change? I guess to your point, the strategy is very much the being that sort of center point for people's financial lives. It sort of, as you say, it kind of cements the customers don't often go, oh well, I'm secure by more than £25,000 more or what. Like they don't get that level of detail. So I imagine it's an interesting message to your customers where it's like, wait, I thought you were a bank, and it's like there's a difference with an e-money or a full banking. But I guess your point with the ticket to ride there, well, actually your access to funds and your access to lending and that changes the way probably the UK regulator looks at you, even though, it's funny thinking you're doing a pilot when you've got millions and millions of customers, right?
We know, I know. Now, I mean, we go through the same journey any startup has gone, and the difference is that we're doing this with like 11 million customers now, by the way. So I think and you're right, this is something we had discussed internally. So from a customer standpoint, people don't check on the FCA register when they sign up to a new financial service. They usually go for the customer experience. And so in reality, from a customer standpoint, nothing will change on day one. So effectively, they will transition to the bank and they have access to the same functionalities, the same app, the same innovative customer experience and UX as well. However, that was more of a choice driven by us, because what does change in the longer term and medium term is that we can offer customers more products. They can have cash ISAs, they can have eventually later on, personal loans or mortgages. So all of a sudden, that's how customers choose. They say, well, all of a sudden I don't need anything else. Yeah. And the reason why I think is important, and the reason why I really a big believer in this mission is that we need to look at the future. And I think there's no doubt the world is changing around us very quickly, right? The way we buy grocery shopping has changed. We don't have probably fixed lines anymore. I mean, things have changed. Mm-hmm. Banking has kind of only started to change. So if I look at my kids, which are kind of teenagers now, what they need is something like Revolut to satisfy all the financial needs, because it's kind of already a future-proof proposition, right? So it's actually appropriate for us to do the steps we need to make sure we get there with all the products. It's almost a duty we have with all the products, with all the safety and all the soundness, and establish ourselves as, yes, we are equivalent to all the other banks in terms of the trust you can have, because that's how people will operate in banking, right? So I think, for me, it's about making sure Revolut is the only player that can combine the level of innovation that will be required and expected by customers in the future with a level of trust that you need to have if you operate in financial services. And I think that's, for me, is the real challenge, and what I believe Revolut can do, and the reason why I say that is because I've been in banking too long. A lot of banks have tried, and I was part of some of these plans, and I came to the conclusion it's very difficult to do it from an incumbent player. It's very difficult. You have to eradicate too much. So I think, but the future will happen. So that's what Revolut is about, right? So become really eventually the go-to bank for all the future generations, and being ready to cope with how the future will work in a way.
And I guess sort of sticking to that, why do you think that is for the incumbents? Because it's very similar. I mean, I've had a very similar experience working 6 years in a big bank, and we've worked with a load of them now. None of them are stupid. Everybody has good ideas. So what's the missing ingredient, do you think?
Well, I face it personally. So it's I think there are probably three things in my view. The one obvious everybody mentions that I think is actually least important is legacy system, legacy everything, right? Legacy technology and all that. That is true, but it actually can be overcome if you really want it. So I don't think that's the main one, but it does matter because it creates a little bit of a hurdle that you need to go beyond. So you need to build from scratch, right? If you have even a technology system, core banking architecture that is not using cloud, probably you need to do so much work before you get there. It's number one. Number two, I think, is actually cultural. So it's about, just kind of don't see the need. So the kind of the generation, the way the bank works is about, some committees, policies, procedure. You need to change so much of how you make decisions. That again, is another hurdle. And then the third one, which I think is probably the real one, is the real reason that really stands in the way is incentives. So incentives matter, and in reality, in a bank, why would you do it? If you are the largest bank in a country and you are the head of retail or the CEO, right? CEOs actually are trying to push this, but why would you cannibalize your own business to launch something very innovative where you're probably going to do a lot of mistakes and potentially, might have some incident along the way, if there is no need to do that for your job, for the customer. So in reality, unless you create a reason why, then there isn't really a real incentive to do it. Now, the good news, I think, is that with the fintech ecosystem in UK, the reason why has arrived a bit, right? So that's why competition matters a lot. So the competition that fintech players have created, the pressure on incumbents in the last 10 years, has triggered some innovation even in incumbents, because they had to be kind of there, right? Otherwise, it would not have happened. And I say that because I was at Barclays 10 years ago. We thought you could never open an account online. And seriously, that was the secret ground. And today it's mainstream. But I wonder whether would that ever have happened if there wasn't Monzo, Starling, Revolut, right?
Yeah.
Probably not. So incentives matter and competition matter. So that's make a difference. So.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Have you felt that as well? Obviously, you've been in for a year, but even until the announcement of the license, there was a lot of skepticism about a license happening, and it was the last view of Revolut will never get customers. Oh, you've got millions of customers. They'll never ship. Oh no, they're shipping loads of things. And it's almost the last excuse why big banks shouldn't step up. You must have found that quite interesting to sort of step into that as well. Particularly with, I imagine you've had a load of messages from old friends from the banking side of things going, oh no, all the things we worried about have happened, so...
Yeah, I actually think it's fascinating to look at the psychology of this. I think on one side, if you want to achieve things that will be extraordinary, you need to be more on the contrarian view sometimes. Otherwise, in the mainstream, not much happens. On one side, I think on the other side, I had a fair dose of this already when I launched Molo, where everybody was saying, you cannot launch mortgages, digitize mortgages, and all. And that, I learned a lot from that. So now, actually, when people tell you, or cannot be done, I think, okay, that's a reason, very good reason to actually do it. So. Yeah. And I think it's normal, right? When you see new things happening, there is some resistance to change. I think by now there is a good acknowledgement. I think that not only Revolut, but probably all the fintech players have brought massive value to the ecosystem, to UK people, to customers. So I think maybe I would like to believe that now there's a bit less skepticism. But you tell me if that's not the case. We can.
Well, I think it's less skepticism now. I think it's more people hoping you just go away, because actually it's. You're setting a different agenda, and I think not just you with Revolut. I think Revolut, Starling, Monzo, you guys are setting a different standard. I mean, if you look at customer satisfaction scores, you're setting a different standard. But I think for all of the points that you've made, those 3 points they're not separate. They're the interconnectivity of cultural problems or technology problems or incentives. It's a Gordian knot that's almost impossible for big organizations to solve. So, and that for me is, almost the. I always find it so amazing. We talk to a lot of banks, and I said before we started recording this, people always go, it's like, how are Revolut doing what they're doing? And I'm like, the things you've said in the first half of the show, if you write them down, are really obvious, in a nice way. Obvious. It's like, listen to what customers want, be really good at shipping code, and it's like rinse and repeat and do that over and over and over again. And it's really obvious, but really hard to actually do.
It's very hard to do.
Which is why big banks spent more time on strategy than they do on execution, because the execution is the really difficult part. On that note, we're going to have to wrap up the first part of the show, I'm afraid. But for the listeners, don't go anywhere, because up next, what we're going to be doing is talking about what does 2025 hold and what will be beyond that for Revolut as well.
Cybersecurity is the top concern for UK businesses, according to Vanta's recent State of Trust report. But whether you're a startup founder or an experienced security professional, Vanta is here to help. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, centralize security workflows, complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Join over 9,000 global companies like Flow Health, Synthesia, and Alica Bank, who use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/insider. That's VANTA.com/insider for $1,000 off.
At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can even finish the bachelor's degree you started in 22 months for $20,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by pace, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
All right, folks, welcome back to Fintech Insider Insights, where I'm in conversation with the UK CEO of Revolut, Francesca Carlesi. Before the break, we were exploring all of the groundwork that Revolut have laid over the last few years and the trajectory that is shaping up for the company's future. What we're going to do is dive a little bit into the bold expansion plans, because, I mean, everybody always gets really excited about a job advert. You know, there's a job, Revolut are hiring for this, therefore there must be like a whole division, or maybe, you know, starting, I guess, with the license. So, the license has happened. You must have to now hire a slightly different type of person into the organization to run a bank in that way. I mean, how is that? And also, I guess, how do you hire the right types of people? Because, you touched on a few cultural architects there of, never settle and, get things done and whatnot. Finding the right types of people feels like it's almost the most critical part.
I think it is, absolutely. So clearly on your first question, so getting a license was just the beginning, as we mentioned before, in my view, right, of the journey. I mean, the bank is a separate entity in Revolut, so we need to build the bank in a way. Clearly a lot, there was already a team and so on, and we should talk a moment about the value of the team as well. But clearly we needed to strengthen a little bit and the capabilities and the people we have and the number of people as well. So that's been one of the key areas of focus in the last 6 months. We grew a lot. We're now more than 100 people just in the bank, and clearly a lot of the more customer-facing function will move only with the customer. So that's been a key focus, and it's going very well, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, to the second point that you made before, that's really important. So, and I'm really happy I actually went to this even before. I think what type of people would, how do you hire when you need to hire so fast, but also you need a special type of person. And for me, it's not just about Revolut. Maybe Revolut, we are very disciplined. There's a lot of discipline about hiring. I think that keeping the bar very high on talent has been one other aspect of the secret sauce of Revolut. But ultimately it boils down for me to 2 things. Right? You need to have people with the right experience or knowledge, but also with the right mindset. And it's at least 50-50. And that's a massive difference from when you hire for a big bank or big corporate, because usually it's just about CV and experience and knowledge, but you really need people that know really well what they're hired for, but they have the right mindset that they can thrive in an entrepreneurial environment, fast pace and so on. And the mindset is almost like being a little bit like open to change, open to the emergency of the day, open to be flexible mentally and be able to go to make decision based on first principle rather than on what you remember you've done 10 years ago.
Sure.
So that's how we manage hiring. And I think it means that sometimes it takes a long time, but it does make a difference if you hire the right people.
Yeah. I guess, I didn't mean any disservice to people who work in, like you worked in a big bank, I worked in a big bank.
Yeah.
It's good people. Like,
it's really good.
It's almost finding those people who've got a slight frustration, a slight chip on the shoulder of being held back in those things. That's what we've found definitely is every bank I've ever worked with, there are smart people. It's almost unleashing their potential you can get out of them, isn't it? But
but just for clarity, because you're right. So I think it's all about suitability. It's not a judgment of better or worse. I think it's about different work environment require different, even personalities, right?
Sure.
So when you are in a startup, you hire different people. You need to hire differently than if you are in a very big corporate, because the people that will be happy in the environment and they will thrive are slightly different. So that's the only thing. And I think at Revolut is a mix of the two things. We do need deep knowledge and deep experience, but we do need the ability to also be creative and entrepreneurial and all that. So,
lots of work then in the sort of retail banking side of things. But I guess there's lots of sort of speculation around, and a few announcements here and there and different things about the sort of ambitions around wealth. Obviously it's something that you guys have done quite a lot in. You were one of the first to allow things like buying of crypto and different things and different assets that are around that. Why does the wealth space particularly seem appealing? What is it that you guys have seen in that side that you think, do you know what, we can have some impact here?
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the most exciting areas for financial services, right? So I think if you are in financial services at different areas, one of them being wealth, that you kind of, it is a customer needs. At the end, again, it goes back to what I mentioned before. At the end, what we see is that our customers are very, if we don't offer it, then we go somewhere else, and they want to invest, they want to save, they want to buy crypto. And so for us, it's more about, okay, why don't we provide this service? And we think we can do it better than anybody else. So that's the genesis of it, and the genesis of why we allow, we kind of offer probably quite a good product from our crypto assets, but also from our wealth and trading and so on. And we are building on that as well. So that's the genesis and the reason for that. I think that in general, wealth business is a very good business to have. It's mostly fee-based for any financial institution, right? Mostly fee-based, is effectively attractive to customers that are more affluent, and so they're probably more asset, at least that you can manage. So I think it makes sense in any banking strategy to have a very good proposition on that side. What we think is that we don't want to kind of drown it in a very long list of banking services. That's how people think today. You want something, you just go on an app and you get it. So, and that's why we want to make sure there are touch points or entry points to the different services that you need, right?
Yeah.
But always under the Revolut same proposition and experience and umbrella in a way.
Yeah, it's an interesting market, isn't it? We've done a lot of work in that space lately, and actually it feels more akin to the SME market than it is the retail market. And actually your SME capability is very good as well. Your ability to spin up accounts and get access and get the structure and advice that you need to really quickly. I mean, it'd be interesting. I'm really fascinated to see what sort of angle you guys play with that, and it's a difficult beachhead, because obviously retail's, Revolut's origin, travel money, like you can hit a beachhead really hard, but the wealth space is a bit more complex. So how much, I guess, is having the banking capability even more legitimizing you because it's very different, give me a couple of grand to buy crypto is really different from, give me 50K for whatever, so.
I think it's very synergic with the bank. At the same time, we want to think about it as a business that needs to be, has the ability to attract customers on itself, right? Because otherwise you kind of lower the bar as well. So they're very synergic. I think but in general, it is part of a plan of saying, well, actually, these are needs that customers have. Sometimes we identify they're actually underserved in the market or they're not served well. Yeah. And so there is an opportunity. So on the wealth side, it's more of an opportunity to kind of provide a great product to customers. They're very attractive customers for the bank as well, right? For example, the SME lending or the SME side, which is not lending, but is a massively underserved market. And that's where it started, because effectively this country, it has a lot of small businesses that are very underserved by banks. It will be more underserved after Basel 3.5, right? So, and what we are seeing is the reason why it's been a massively successful business for us in the last 2 years. The uptake has been incredible. And this is because also there are not many other options out there, and we just propose something that is really good. So sometimes it's also about, again, it goes back, right, to there are a lot of small businesses that will be completely underserved otherwise, and it's good to be there, right, for them. So
and I guess part of, as you say, sort of listening to your customers, you've got a great insight into the overlap between the retail space, the wealth space, the SME space, and the that Venn diagram must be pretty tight in the middle there for the types of customers you're serving for. I guess one of the things that's continually in the news with you guys is, the revenue numbers, the sort of chase on profitability. I mean, how much... I'm trying to almost sort of figure out what's the main North Star. Obviously, you've had this agenda to get the license. There's always an agenda to make sure that actually the business is growing and revenue is growing and profitability is there. How does that factor into was that number 2 or number 3 objective for you this year? Or
maybe we need to ask Nick about this. I can say from what I see is it's quite high up. It's probably in the top 2 objectives. And I think I understand it's been that way since the very beginning of Revolut. So I know a lot of the fintech ecosystem has shifted from growth to profitability and a bit swinging one side or the other. I think at Revolut, things need to make sense also from a unit economics point of view since day one. So I would say it's probably the same level or, immediate, it's growth and profitability that go hand in hand. But the good thing, and the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of disciplines that goes with it. It's not just a concept. It's not just a strategy. As you said, right? It's not just a strategy. This is ingrained in the way choices are made. So, for example, when we launch a new market, a new country, enter a new market, there are very specific KPIs that needs to be hit in terms of unit economics at the beginning to be able to then invest more in that market. Otherwise, you realize, well, that's probably not a good market to be. We don't have product market fit. And the discipline to be open to the fact that that's the case and to go back or revisit is unique. So you just cannot go ahead, right? Same things with product. There are products that they need to hit some KPIs or profitability and unit economics as well. Otherwise, you just kind of cannot grow them. You cannot put new money, after, money you just put in so on. And same things, it goes for central costs. A lot of focus on cost control, which you'd be surprised, Revolut has been profitable now for like 4 years, incredibly so. So, but that discipline is so much ingrained in the mentality that it makes a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think if they're, core principles of making the business successful from the get-go, if you lose those, then it becomes difficult, doesn't it, in that way? So, I mean, it's interesting, actually. One of the things that Revolut has done really well in that regard is actually the sort of same ethos from the founders all the way through to today seems to be there. And I know we touched a little bit on recruitment, but what's the onboarding like for such a role like that? How far a step back do you do to go... And to your point earlier on, it must be part of the interview process to make sure that day one it's right. But you never really know what somebody's like till you work with them, do you? Really? So what was that journey like to kind of have it running in your veins, as it were?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the person, and I think although learning Revolut is not it requires more adaptation, I would say, on average than probably learning another company. Right? So it's maybe true also of all the other startups. I think is so. I would say 2 things. One, the interview process is quite regimented and it's very specific. So in reality, there is a lot of screening that happens there, which I think is good because otherwise you might then onboard a lot of people and they don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but that's a very unique process, and I think a lot of people that go through this, they kind of confirm that. So the onboarding, you're given a lot of power and a lot of autonomy from day one. There's no hand-holding, which I think is good because then at the end quite quickly. But there is a clear, probation matters. I'll put it this way. So in reality, we do have probation period like everybody, but there are serious conversations, serious measurement of how you're doing during your probation. And again, if it works, that's great. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's okay as well, right? So... So I think onboarding is like you're left a little bit to your devices, but you either kind of try right away or kind of know quite quickly.
Yeah, and again, that sounds like it sounds both very creative but analytical at the same time. And actually, having worked in a big bank, I've seen underperformers basically just live for 7 years in a corner, it's
it
rather
wouldn't
than,
happen, yeah.
leaving the organization. And that has a cultural drag. They say
Yes.
sort of accepting underperformance is worse than anything else you can do in a business, right? So that must have a sort of self-reinforcing thing of everybody knowing what value they bring, but knowing it doesn't matter if it's you or if it's a junior product manager, that
It's
everybody's
the same.
held to the same standard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, I think, one of the key things. And I think that is so fundamental, because at the end, I think it's like a sport team, right? If you want to win. You want to win the Champions League, anything that, but you also know to get there, you need to have a high-performing team.
Yeah.
And everybody in that team wants the other people to be high-performing, because otherwise you kind of drag down. So, and I think in my view, all these topics about, performance and is about that. If you do want to go to the Olympics, you want to go to Champions League, it doesn't happen by chance. And every single, you need to train, you need to also have people, and it's actually very reinforcing for the people that are in a high performance team to then have the push to continuously stretch themselves and always kind of grow and always learn. Otherwise, if you are more like complacent, in an extreme sense, right? You're dragging down the team, and then you're creating standards that are very low standards. So I think if we think about all the companies, there are exceptional companies in the world, and I've been in, for example, McKinsey before. We know about Goldman, right? At the end, you do need to have a high bar, because it's about that high performance team that we want to get there. So I think that's a culture general Revolut. Now, there are, of course, this is not so draconian, right? But it is important. What it boils down to is to recognizing the people make a company.
Yeah.
And that's a profound recognition. And so making sure that they're treated as an important asset as anything else, and not lowering the bar too much just because they are very big. Because at that point, you're creating a little bit of it's difficult to keep up with all the ambition that you have, in a way.
Yeah, that's a the product software development process and the performance management process have to be as effective. And we've seen that. You guys have rolled out a HR system in the market because if it works amazingly well for you, it will probably work really amazingly well for other people, right? So, I guess one of the other big changes that happened in the year that you've been there, you've got an amazing, you literally got your name up in lights in Canary Wharf now, in a big office, taking that space. How has that sort of changed that dynamic as well? Because we're seeing, you guys have been pretty. You've always had a central office.
Yeah.
You've been pretty good on remote work anyway. People seem to work wherever they need to be working. So, but is that sort of a sign of significance, having the big office in Canary Wharf now?
Yeah, I think it is exciting, to be honest. I also get a lot of pictures from different people. So I think the office is also a little bit of a sign of our focus and commitment to the UK. Because this office is, this is where our headquarters is. And so, recognizing the type of player that Revolut has become, establishing, a place to be at the center of the financial district, really, was a big step. But it is important. It is a step we're taking in London because of how much we believe in the UK, in a way. Now, how does that reconcile with our flexible working, if that's what you're working? So I think the way we see it is that the office will be, it will be amazing, by the way. It would be really, really a great place to be. So it would be a place to co-create, to get the teams together, to work together, but to also have a lot of more engagement type of work rather than everybody sitting there. So it will be a place where it's a destination for people to be and work together and create. That doesn't mean that then people will be obliged to go to the office. So we always stand behind a flexible working policy. We see that at Revolut, it doesn't really has an impact. In fact, it allows everybody to work to the best of their abilities from whatever it works best for them. So I think at the end will be the best of two worlds, really, or both worlds, right? You have a fantastic place to be when you do want to talk to people and, engage and so on, more physically, but at the same time, recognizing that maybe different roles, different jobs, different days requires a different setting, right? I think I was quite impressed, by the way, about the flexible working policy at Revolut, because I don't know about all the other companies, but I think it's probably the only company I know they found a way to make it work. And that is so empowering, also so inclusive, because, we have a lot of people that don't even live in London, a lot of people like family or kids. So I think it goes a long way in terms of inclusivity, but also it's very empowering because at the end you're all about your outcomes, not about being measured about how many hours you're there. But I have no doubt with the new office, probably we'll see more and more people there. It's a fantastic place.
Yeah, I mean, it gives people a reason to come together at that point, doesn't it? But it's an interesting one. We've often found you talked earlier on a little bit about dissemination of decision making. Actually, in order to do great product development, you kind of have to give people the ability to make decisions, don't you? And actually, we often say with our teams at 11FS, it's kind of like we don't care where you are, like not because we don't love you guys. It's like because it doesn't matter to us where you are, where you're doing, what you're doing. So it could be, on the other side of the world, so long as it doesn't affect us from a tax status perspective. If you're listening, HMRC, or if if it's good for them, it's good for us type thing. So I guess looking ahead, then first year done. Loads of big things, new office coming, banking license done, all of these opportunities in all of these other spaces. And as you say, getting into more traditional banking, but with, your capability from a product development. What does the next 5 years look like? Like, where are we going to be standing in a year's time when you're doing your second year review?
Oh, well, okay. Feels a lot of things will have happened by then. I think there's a very clear focus, at least I talk about UK, right? And it is about becoming the primary bank in the UK for everybody. My personal aspiration is not only to be the primary bank, but to be the best bank in the market. And I think we can, because so that's what we follow. What that means is a lot of product launches. So we mentioned, probably we will launch some kind of lending and things like that to complete the proposition. Probably a lot of also, more general proposition, more creative ideas that is part of our listening to the customers. But also, in 1 year time, I really like to see, and I do expect the Revolut will be recognized as not only as a bank formally, but like from customer standpoint, at the same degree of trust. So to be a really trusted player for the market as any other bank out there, right? Not having lost its competitive and innovation edge, which I think that's where I'd like Revolut to be. So, and I think if you fast forward even more, when I talk about being the best bank in the market, it's really for future generations, is really being the only player in financial services that young people of today will look at their destination place for financial services, because it will be on the mobile, on the phone. It's already digital native in a way, and it already serves all the needs that are not like box in a banking. So I think that's where Revolut can be and should be, right? And of course in the UK, but globally as well.
Yeah. That trust point's an interesting one. Jason Bates, who's one of the co-founders of 11FS, but did Monzo and stuff as well. I mean, he always says people trust banks to not run away with all their money, but they don't trust them to do the right thing for them. What does trust sort of mean to you guys at Revolut? Because the things that you're delivering are different than just financial instruments. They're services for people. Yeah. So it's more meaningful than just this banking license means I'm good to 87,000 or whatever it is these days. Actually, it's something more meaningful than that, right?
Yeah, I think trust is not a rubber stamp of a license. It's something you need to earn, right? So, and I think for me it means two things. So one, it means the customer's experience. So effectively, the customer trust that you do the right thing for them, which is a bit what maybe the banking industry have lost. That we already have. So the fact that we have such a massive customer uptake, regardless of whether we're a bank or not, it doesn't matter, but is because we are, at the end, customers vote with their feet, right? So at the end, it's because we are delivering proposition, they're useful, they're great. We are open to when things don't go as well. So that's already there. We need to maintain it, okay? We should never drop the bar and never get into the legacy mentality, right? So we need to continue. We also continuously challenge ourselves on the product. So that's one part of the trust that I think is there, and it's a little bit of advantage, unfair advantage right now. The second part is more the traditional one, right? I think there is still a sense, if we think how Revolut was wrong with the FX product, so a lot of people still use Revolut as a transactional card rather than the primary destination. I don't think it's a trust factor only. It's also about the functionalities you have. But I think that not only becoming a bank, but also building all the other products and kind of starting to talk to customers in that way will gradually build that perception that, we are an institution that is here to stay and I can trust with my money and I'm really comfortable with that. So it's both sides.
Yeah, trusting you with more and more of your financial life. But I guess, to your point, people,
people really do a lot, yes.
Well, they vote with their feet, and 11 million people are voting with their feet with regards to that.
Yeah,
but that's a pretty impressive number. And I mean, it's exciting to see what comes next, I have to say. I'm really looking forward. You'll have to come back and talk to us more about the next big product launch when it happens. But lovely to have you on. We're going to have to wrap up the show now because we are running out of time. So thank you to everybody to listening to this. And Francesca, so much for joining us. Where can people connect with you or learn a little bit more about all the good stuff you're doing at Revolut?
So absolutely. You can reach me at LinkedIn, Francesca Carlesi.
Very good. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. If you like what you've heard, follow the podcast and don't forget to leave us a review. It really helps us make it better and helps other people find the show as well. As always, if you want to join the conversation, you can find us on every social media channel at this stage. Just search for 11FS or search for Fintech Insider, or do email us if you want to on podcasts@11fs.com. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
Cybersecurity is the top concern for UK businesses, according to Vanta's recent State of Trust report. But whether you're a startup founder or an experienced security professional, Vanta is here to help. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, centralize security workflows, complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Join over 9,000 global companies like Flow Health, Synthesia, and Alica Bank who use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/insider. That's VANTA.com/insider for $1,000 off.